Welcome into ESPN Headlines. I'm Cassidy Hubbard alongside Mark Schlereth, and we have a headline out of the NFL for you. Former NFL defensive back Hamza Abdullah took to Twitter, blasted the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell, saying the league treats players like slaves and that Goodell would sell his soul for $1. Now, Abdullah also said that the NFL is lying and denying the fact that football causes brain damage, and he also said the league should pay for psychiatric evaluations for players. Mark, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think a lot of what he's saying is 100% correct. And now, obviously, the way you go about it and the way you get that message out there, I think Roger Goodell has embraced the player safety aspect of trying to take some of this contact out of games. But when the NFL and Roger Goodell wanted to preach to me about safety first, and then they settle a $765 million lawsuit, and part of that lawsuit is, one, there is no admission of guilt, that they didn't know what was going on, but more importantly, 10, 15, 20 years of research toward head injuries, they don't have to reveal any of what they knew. And I'm sitting there saying, those two things are not congruent. You can't tell me that player safety is your number one priority and at the same time take all this research that you've accumulated that basically points the finger of guilt to you and say, we're not going to reveal any of that because we're going to hide it for ourselves. What if there's something in that research that helps create the next level of player safety, that helps take some of these head injuries and make sense of those head injuries? But we're going to tuck it away under a desk and we're not going to let anybody see it, because it does prove essentially that there was a certain amount of malfeasance in the way we addressed head injuries. And so that's my biggest issue. So you can't sit here and preach player safety to me and then withhold 20 years of research about player safety, because that doesn't eventually get us to the point where we want to be, to protect our players, to protect these head injuries, and to know as much as possible about that. So when players like myself and everybody else are done playing, that we have the best possible resources to make sure our health is as good as it can be down the road.
So you're saying the NFL should be called out. Abdullah is not going to be the last one to call the NFL out. And we've seen Roger Goodell already make some significant changes to the game. But looking ahead, how much do you think the NFL will look differently in the future?
Well, I mean, I think there's going to come a time when it may be fairly unrecognizable. I mean, we're already legislating contact out of the game to some degree. And you know, that's an issue for me, because I really think that that's part of what makes this game great. The other issue I have is, you know, are you all in? As the NFL, are you all in? Because you allow us and every other network to play hours and hours of big-time hits and big-time collisions, because I, as a football player and as a fan of the National Football League, love it. And we market it. We market the violence. Look at what these guys can do that nobody else can do. And if you really want to change the culture of the league, I think there's a couple of steps. Number one, eliminate our ability. You have control over what we play and what we don't play. You own the rights to your footage. Eliminate those big hits. We can't show them anymore if you want to change the culture. If you also want to change the culture of the National Football League, instead of finding players who have an average of 3.4 years to make their money and taking money away from those players, you want to change the culture? Because look at the sideline when a big hit happens. Every player on the sideline gets jacked up about it. The coaches get jacked up about it. Start finding the owners, because then that message will actually trickle down. If you start taking money out of the pockets of the owners or suspend the players with pay, now all of a sudden I have my best defensive player can't play. He's on the sideline in street clothes and I'm paying him millions of dollars to play the game. I'm coming down as an owner to my coach's box and saying, you guys either rectify the way this guy's hitting people, or you're going to be the ones that are going to be looking for work. But we've got it backwards, and it really is nothing to me. It's nothing more than window dressing. Look how much we care. We fine our players, but it doesn't change the culture of the league. Guys are trying to do it better. I understand that, but big hits and the violence is still what sells in the National Football League. And I think a lot of what the NFL is doing is just window dressing. That's it.
Regardless what changes are coming, what's not going to change is that player safety is going to continue to be a big topic in the NFL.